This is the most difficult challenge I've ever attempted on the channel, and also the hardest mod for the Batman Arkham series ever made. The Knightfall Overhaul, created by GP Unity, is a mod that makes a ton of changes to Arkham Asylum's core gameplay to obviously make the game much more challenging. Any and all enemies have been buffed to the absolute max. Faster attacks with significant shorter counter time frames, much smarter AI that can spot you very easily in predator sections, and of course major increases to their damage output that basically just rip your health bar to shreds if you ever get hit. From bosses practically leaving you with 1 HP just by making contact, to the most insignificant enemies now dealing so much damage to you that it's not even funny. Yeah, just about everyone and everything contained on Arkham Island is a significant threat to Batman now. Also, Titans are now far less likely to do their easily countered charge move, which is the only way to deal anything more than chip damage to them, by the way, instead throwing stuff at you, swinging their fists, and getting up close way more often. Boss fights have been completely reworked for an added challenge, which you'll soon see what I mean by that as we make our way through each boss in the story. Some of Batman's most important gadgets have even received a nerf thanks to the mod. Explosive Gel has a much smaller radius, forcing the player to be a lot more precise with their placement, and the Batarangs, by far your quickest attack, has been modified to the point where they will no longer knock over thugs in combat anymore. And just because I really feel like torturing myself today, I'm putting an added self-imposed restriction of absolutely zero health upgrades whatsoever. Since fights get way more difficult as you progress through the story, especially with this mod installed, extra armor is usually supposed to help balance this out, but I want to get the authentic Knightfall experience here, and that means I'm always just 1 or 2 hits away from dying throughout this entire run. So with all of that out of the way, can we beat Batman Arkham Asylum's hardest difficulty mod without any health upgrades? Let's find out. Right after I mentioned this video's sponsor, Ekster. Ekster was recently kind enough to send me their brand new wallet, and just opening up the box you can already tell how high quality everything here is. The packaging, the design, and of course the wallet itself. What you're looking at is the Ekster Cardholder Pro, and it has multiple new features that the previous design did not. The Cardholder Pro has been reworked to have an even more ergonomic shape to fit well within your hand. It's extremely slim, about half the size of a normal wallet, but can still hold up to 14 cards in total. Speaking of cards, Ekster has even upgraded the card ejector to metal instead of the previous plastic materials used in their old wallet, where all you have to do is push in the little trigger and your cards pop right out for you to access and use quite easily. Overall, the entire wallet is just very high quality. I am genuinely impressed. Another product I received was Ekster's Finder card. This little guy is super small, about the size of a normal credit card, and all you have to do is charge him up once every 4 months, connect it to the Apple Find My app, and then simply put it inside your card holder so that you'll know exactly where your wallet is at all times. No more misplacing or losing it. The Finder card will even send you a notification if you get too far away, so yeah, super convenient, especially if you're a forgetful person like me. If you want to get an Ekster card holder for yourself, along with any accessories like the Finder card, you can click on the link below and use my special code KNERD to get an extra 5% off your order, on top of any sales Ekster already has on their website. Thank you so much to Ekster for sponsoring today's video. Alright, starting up the game, and it's already clear that some major adjustments have been made now thanks to the mod. Not only has the intro scene been slightly altered, but there's also 3 new difficulty levels to choose from: Regular, Insane, and Insane Plus. Regular is apparently just the base game's hard mode with a moderate challenge added. Insane mode makes enemies eliminate you quickly and have bosses push you to your limits, which you'll see what that means very soon. And finally, Insane Plus, which is identical to the previous difficulty level except no counter icons. We'll be playing on Insane Plus for this run. So starting a new save, we bring Joker to Arkham Asylum, go through the game's really long walking introduction, and once Joker escapes, the game finally begins. Right out of the gate, Joker releases a handful of thugs on us for a tutorial combat encounter, which is obviously nothing challenging yet. With that said, I did purposely take a hit just to see how much damage the thugs really do now because of the mod, and holy, that's half of my health bar gone in just 1 punch. Yeah, I'm gonna take this time to put a death counter on screen so we can keep track of how many times I die in the future, because these are the most basic tutorial enemies I'll face throughout this entire run, and they're already doing this kind of damage to me. Can you imagine what stronger enemies will be able to do later on into the game, especially since I won't have any added health upgrades to compensate? Alright, so moving on, we rescue the cop that's being held hostage by Zsasz, save the people inside of this Joker gassed area, and then arrive at this room face to face with Joker, who introduces us to our very first Titan boss fight. Now, while this guy is a defective Titan and all you have to do is wait for him to die, I was curious curious again and purposely got hit just to test how much damage I would take. And yeah, it's almost like I'm not even playing as Batman anymore. So after beating the Titan, we discover that Officer Balls is actually working for Joker and has kidnapped Gordon, begin tracking his trail all the way through the elevator shaft, which leads us into our largest combat encounter thus far. I won't be going over every fight like this one moving forward, but this one's pretty important because it kind of showcases the learning curve of this run for me. Take a look here. I clearly start my punch animation slightly before the thug starts his, right? Yet I don't even get through half of my attack animation before taking damage. This really just shows how quickly these enemies can attack now and how careful I need to approach combat because I simply can't out-punch enemies and the window for me to counter is really small. I need to always be focused on where I'm placing myself in order to avoid getting hit because one or two mistakes and I'm already dead. Okay, so right after finishing off these enemies, we learn that the thugs managed to gain access to the armory, which means this is our introduction to stealth. Now, usually this section is quite easy considering you don't even have to knock out these first three thugs, you can just skip right past them. The problem is, I completely forgot that this doesn't work on the final thug as well. If you try to open the vent without taking him down first, he'll somehow notice that you're there, and yeah. Alright, our first death. I also thought I should mention that guns are typically an instant one-shot with this mod installed, by the way. The only reason it took a little longer for me to die here was because I was in a specific animation that caused the thug to miss like half his shots. But yeah, moving forward, if I ever get spotted in stealth encounters, it will be an instant death guaranteed. So once we open up the vent safely this time, we can crouch our way through until getting to the real first Predator section of the game. The strategy here is quite simple. Don't get seen. Since the enemy AI and Batman's controls can be pretty janky sometimes in this game, I actually found that the safest way to deal with stealth at the moment is not to get in close to do silent takedowns, but rather just use a batarang to knock over an enemy so they're no longer a threat, and then follow it up with a ground takedown to knock them out since those don't alert thugs for whatever reason. Rinse and repeat for the rest of the enemies, and that's that. As we progress through the game, stealth won't always be this easy, but for now, while Predator rooms are still fairly empty with all of the thugs spread out, this is the most viable strategy for sure. So after clearing the room and talking to the guard, we can leave intensive treatment, save the Batmobile from a bunch of goons, and then track Gordon all the way to the medical building. As we're arriving outside the medical building, I think now's a good time to mention just how much health these thugs really have. I mean, even with critical strikes active, if I purely punch my way through a combat encounter, it still takes me 6 hits to knock out one single enemy. I'm legitimately getting combos of 50 to 100 consistently. That is not normal this early on into the game. So after a very long combat encounter, we can head inside the medical building, where we quickly run into another Predator map. Again, this one's pretty easy too because there's only 5 enemies, 2 of which can be taken out almost immediately using explosive gel. The remaining 3 went down with my batarang followed by a ground takedown, and that was that. So we talked to the medical staff who was previously being held hostage, and they send us on a mission to go save all of the missing doctors. None of these are really noteworthy for the most part, other than Dr. Chen, where we're faced with this large combat encounter before we can save him. This fight is the perfect example of how quickly things can shift out of your favor with the Knightfall Overhaul installed. Everything was going so good, but once I made one minor mistake taking me out of rhythm, the next thing you know, I'm a one-tap. Regardless of me messing up though, I still cleared the room with the little health I had left, saved Chen and the remaining doctors, backtracked to where we originally came from, only for, you guessed it, another stealth section. Just 3 enemies? Should be pretty easy, right? Well, normally this thug is supposed to turn left and keep on walking, but for whatever reason, he did not do that this time, instead pulling off a 360 on me while I'm gliding down to take out a different thug. Nice, another death. So being much more careful the next time because, as I said, enemy AI can be really janky. We get through the stealth section without issue, aside from one little scare at the end. What the? So we go inside the elevator, receive a dose of Crane's delicious fear gas, and with that we've officially arrived at the first boss fight of the game. Scarecrow. Remember how the mod totally reworks the boss fights of Arkham Asylum? Yeah, that's where this comes into play. From a pure aesthetic standpoint, Scarecrow's eyes have been adjusted to be red now instead of the orange color that they usually are, which is terrifying in itself, but that's not all. You see, the mod actually makes Scarecrow have quicker movement and turn around faster than usual, giving you less time to get to a safe zone. Now with that said, this section was still very straightforward. Since this is the very first fight against Crane, the structure of this battle is designed to be a lot more lenient and give players a significant amount of time, meaning Scarecrow's faster movement thanks to the mod isn't all that noticeable yet, and I got through it fairly easily. However, do keep in mind that as we continue to go through Scarecrow's more complex boss fights later on though, you'll definitely notice that the fight is harder overall, the timing is off, and certain safe spots that you could make it to in time usually are almost certain death now. So after beating Scarecrow for the first time and finishing off one more round of enemies in the hallway where I put my explosive gel to good use, we then arrive at the final segment of the medical center where we can see that Harley has Gordon at gunpoint, and if Batman's detected, Jim dies. Now, the Predator section here is super easy for obvious reasons. We don't even have to take out the enemies, just sneak past all the thugs, climb up the stairs, and take down Harley. What follows this stealth section is where the real challenge comes in. Bane's boss fight. Yep, pretty much back-to-back bosses. Well, what exactly does the mod do to make Bane harder? Well, let's just go over the hardest part first, which is Bane's new and improved damage output. If you ever get hit by Bane's insanely huge hitbox attacks, Batman is left with what is essentially 1 HP in this run because everything kills you on impact now. This is not good, especially because, as I mentioned earlier, the Titan AI has been adjusted to be much smarter than usual. While technically not a Titan, Bane still falls under that category, meaning it's much harder to trigger his charge attack. You know, the only move that does anything more than chip damage to Bane. And if you didn't think it was bad yet, it also takes a whopping 4 of these charge attacks just to take out 1 of Bane's health bars. Okay, Bane wasn't actually that bad. In fact, over time I realized that this boss was more so just a test of patience than anything. Are you willing to run around and wait for Bane to finally start up a charge attack again? Or are you gonna risk it and go for chip damage? I'm not gonna lie, I risked it 3 times in fact. I was constantly placing explosive gel on the floor so that when Bane ran over it, I could explode him. I was always trying to get in a few extra punches, basically just trying to maximize my damage to him, and I deservedly died 3 times in a row because of that. However, in those 3 deaths, I did learn enough about Bane's boss fight to set up a path to beat him. So in my 4th attempt, I instantly started by running to the back right corner. This was a far enough distance away to get Bane to start his charge attack, and since he was currently stuck in a taunt animation, I even had extra time to place some explosive gel on the floor. So after dodging the charge attack, I found that the best strategy for maximum chip damage was 1, 2, 3 punches, dive away, blow up explosive gel, and here's where you could go in for a few extra punches if you want to risk it, but after 3 deaths already, I sure didn't. Now the fight becomes all about just waiting for Bane's next charge attack. All I had to do was create enough space between myself and Bane to where he wouldn't walk over to attack me close range, make sure to dodge everything he threw, and then he would eventually charge again. After that, it's just rinse and repeat until Bane's first health bar is completely gone. Now, during the 2nd stage is where things get a little more tricky because a wave of thugs join in on the fight. This is where I found that it's super important to place lots of explosive gel before the thugs drop down and while Bane is still recovering, because it becomes extremely useful in a second. You see, right after Bane charged, I was actually able to use my explosive gel to blow up every single enemy, allowing me to easily take them all out with a few quick ground takedowns. With the thugs dead and only Bane left standing, the fight just becomes another rinse and repeat until finally arriving at stage 3. Now, in stage 3, even more thugs join in on the fight, and to make it just a little harder, Bane seems to always start off this phase by charging at Batman right away, meaning I don't have any time to place explosive gel this time around. So it just becomes a can you deal with both Bane and his enemies all attacking you at once kind of fight. I'm not gonna lie, it was pretty tricky given how fast these basic thugs can get in attacks now while I'm trying to focus on Bane. I even got hit by him mid-takedown, leaving me as a 1-tap. However, all I had to really do was run around in circles to avoid the thugs while dodging Bane's attacks and wait for a window when it was safe to get in some of my own hits. I didn't have to run around and wait for a window for too long though, because it was just a matter of time before Bane knocked over all of his own guys, leaving me with some really easy ground takedowns. And with that, it's just one more rinse and repeat of the old strategy. I did have quite the scare at the end where I could literally hear Bane charging at me while I was stuck in the explosive gel animation. Don't ask why I was even risking that at this point for unnecessary chip damage, but I narrowly avoided him, and after one more charge attack, Bane was finally defeated. Again, like I said, this is really a test of patience more than anything, with the fight lasting nearly 10 whole minutes while waiting in between charges. If I had stopped playing risky by attacking the thugs when it wasn't fully safe to do so, or going for maximum chip damage on Bane, I probably wouldn't have died 3 times, but we got through it though, which means we can continue on with the run. So, next up, we have to head over to the Batcave via Deadman's Point, learn about Dr. Young's experiments with Venom and the creation of Titan, and then set out to Arkham Mansion to find Dr. Young and the Titan formula before Joker can. But before we can leave the Batcave, we first pick up the Batclaw, which will be extremely helpful in Predator moving forward. Side note, I had no idea you could kick these boxes. Is this well known? Maybe something for a future hidden mechanics video. Anyways, after we quickly exit through the sewers and get up to ground level, deal with the brand new sniper enemies who are honestly easier than the regular gunmen considering that they can't even kill you in one shot like everybody else can, we then finally arrive at our destination. Now look, the mansion section just overall was, to my surprise, easier than expected, but there were some parts that were definitely more challenging. There was certainly a lot of combat, but none really worth mentioning aside from this encounter at the very beginning. Now this room is very congested. There are a lot of thugs packed into this small little area that make it difficult to keep your combo, to get in hits since you can't really create much space and they can all punch way faster than you, no counter icons to tell when one of these guys right next to you is going for an attack. You get the idea. Because of this, I took 2 hits early on, leaving me as a 1-tap. With that said, I did indeed clutch up to avoid dying another time, and even though it took a long time to defeat each and every single one of these thugs because, again, 6 punches per enemy for a knockout, I got through it nonetheless. Normally, this fight doesn't pose a threat at all, but thanks to the mod, I was genuinely on my heels at all times. Outside of that one combat encounter, there were only 2 other areas worth talking about, starting with this predator room. Look, obviously, if I get spotted in stealth, it becomes a nightmare, but as long as you play somewhat carefully, it's pretty easy to avoid detection entirely, at least at this point in the game with how few enemies there are in these large spread out rooms. It was literally no issue to take down 4 of the 6 thugs who were all by themselves with no one near, so why am I even talking about this? Well, one hiccup did occur at the very end where I assumed that the battering would knock this last guy over, but lo and behold, it did not, resulting in me pretty much getting 1-tapped by his rifle where I didn't even get the chance to flinch before my health bar was completely gone. Great, 1 more death added to the counter, making it 6 now. The next time, I did the exact same thing again and just made sure the battering actually knocked the guy over this time around. So after successfully clearing the room and saving the hostages, we can make our way to Dr. Young's office, track our notes all the way back to the library to destroy them permanently, and then run into the final challenge that the mansion section throws at us, Scarecrow. Now like I was talking about, Scarecrow's second boss fight is noticeably a lot more challenging than the first. Due to his quicker speeds, I had tons of close calls even when I was timing Scarecrow perfectly and just running towards the absolute closest safe spot. Like at the beginning, look how fast his beam catches up with me, it's insane. Going a little further, and I guess I was sticking out too much despite literally being behind the wall, so I got spotted and had to restart. I guess this counts as a death? Nevertheless, I got through it the next try, so fast forward through a couple more close calls, and I had made it to the final segment of the boss fight. Just for reference, here's what running down this long pathway looks like in a normal playthrough. Plenty of time before Scarecrow's vision catches up, right? Well, here's what it looks like on the modded playthrough.
I've got you now.
Yikes, another death. Yet, despite that death, I decided to try the exact same thing the next time around instead of just climbing up, hiding behind the wall, and waiting another cycle. Don't ask me why, but it worked and Scarecrow somehow didn't see me, so we move on to another really close call where I also have no idea how he didn't see me, allowing me to get to the bat signal and finish the boss. We do have to add 2 more deaths to the counter, but I'm honestly not complaining though because it could have very easily been a lot more if Scarecrow wasn't completely blind. So yeah, in hindsight, while the first boss fight with Scarecrow obviously did have some close calls, this second boss fight basically forced me to be absolutely perfect. With the mod installed, if you don't time Scarecrow's vision exactly right, you die, plain and simple. If that's how tricky the second Scarecrow fight is, I wonder what the third and final one is gonna be like. Alright, that just about wraps up the Arkham Mansion, so after watching Dr. Young get blown up right in front of us and beating up one more round of thugs that we make quick work of, we can then start tracking Harley all the way to the Arkham Asylum penitentiary where she's holding the warden hostage. Once we make it to the penitentiary, there's a bunch of thugs outside just waiting for me to beat them up, but I guess I shouldn't be talking because I almost died after getting hit twice. Regardless, with them all defeated, we can now head inside. Making our way through the building, we find and talk to Ivy, track down Quincy Sharp finally and rescue him, and once Joker decides to let the lunatics out, who, side note, still managed to freak me out to this day, we begin Harley Quinn's whole shock and awe escapade. Now, while the thugs are still extremely punishing if I ever were to make a mistake, by this point in the run I felt like I'd almost completely adjusted to the faster flow of their attacks, and had locked in the timing enough for me to safely get in frequent ground takedowns. That's not to say I hadn't been using ground takedowns up until now, but I had been using them a lot more cautiously since I was still adjusting to the timing changes. So yeah, this sped up the pace of combat a lot because while it would normally take me 6 punches to knock out an enemy, I was now doing it frequently in just 1 attack. Also, side note, I just want to say that I took down 4 enemies with a single punch here. Batman's area of effect attacks exclusive to Arkham Asylum can be the absolute worst thing sometimes, while also being the coolest thing ever at other times. Anyways, after beating all the thugs Harley sent at me, we have a little goose chase, save the guards from a bomb, and then arrive at the final stage, the electric platforms. Now this fight is fairly straightforward, and like I said, I had pretty much adjusted to the faster flow of combat by this point. My constant mixture of ground takedowns on knocked over enemies, throw attacks to launch thugs into the electricity, and combo takedowns on the guys holding weapons was a much more viable strategy than just flying around the room throwing punches, and it definitely worked to speed up these sections a ton as well. So after finishing off every wave of enemies and tossing Harley around like nothing, we scan our fingerprints, wrap up the penitentiary section of the story, and then we're off to the Botanical Gardens where Joker's hiding out. Now the Botanical Gardens section of Arkham Asylum is where the game really opens up and becomes a lot more difficult, especially with this mod installed. I mean, almost right after heading inside, we're immediately thrown into a fairly large stealth encounter. I started by taking out this guy who was easy pickings, and then right after, grappling up onto this gargoyle and dropping down to get another guy with a silent takedown. Now here's where the weird part comes in. I was literally just grappling around the gargoyles when all of a sudden, this thug climbs up the ladder, sees me up here, and shoots me dead instantly, right on the spot. Now mind you, I had not been spotted at all until this point, so this thug was definitely not supposed to be searching the gargoyles for me already. It makes me wonder if the insane difficulty mod actually changes the gunman's AI behavior to make things just that much more difficult, or if it's just Arkham Asylum being janky, take your pick. Either way, we have to add yet another death to the counter, even though this one was completely out of my control. So after a quick restart, I used a very similar strategy to start out, taking out this first guy with a silent takedown, using a ledge takedown on this second thug, and after stacking 2 bodies right on top of each other, I waited for the remaining 4 enemies to check it out. After they were all in position, I sonic batteringed 1 thug for an instant knockout, and what do you know, 3 thugs all grouped together, perfect for a multi-battering followed by 3 ground takedowns to finish the room. Yeah, I couldn't help but laugh at the fact that I knocked out every single thug at the bottom of the staircase and left them in a pile, completely unintentional but still hilarious. So moving forward, we save the janitor after a pretty basic combat fight, chase after Joker in the most indirect path possible, and then arrive at yet another Predator encounter. Now this one is a lot less problematic than the last, given that the game has a predetermined path laid out for you already, making it extremely easy for me to avoid being spotted in the instant death by gunshots that would have ensued right after. So once we make it all the way through while avoiding detection, we can take out this guard who's manning the lever, and then can simply knock out the remaining thugs one by one as they attempt to climb up this ladder. This is another time where I get the feeling that the gunman's AI has been completely reworked to be a lot more aggressive, because if I recall correctly, you normally have to go back through the room yourself to take these guys out in their respective positions, not just wait for them all to come to you. I'm definitely not complaining though, it made things a lot less complicated for me this time around. Of course, once we finish the last enemy, we can then look for the opening to Joker's secret room, go inside and have a quick chat with Joker, and then find ourselves face to face with our first 2 real titans for a boss fight. Now a quick reminder that because of the difficulty mod, titans obviously do a lot more damage, but like we talked about earlier, their AI behavior has also been adjusted to make them much harder than usual, where they'll be a lot less likely to charge at you. This means that going for chip damage by punching, throwing batterings, or explosive gel is the only option sometimes, which can be extremely risky. This behavior change is very noticeable right off the bat, where one of these titans is supposed to start the fight by charging at you, but they don't do that this time, instead picking up a body to throw at me, and I got hit by it and my health bar is already in the red. Great. Almost immediately after, I took damage again, and I'm honestly surprised I survived a second hit, I can't lie. I tried to lock in, and I got through a good chunk of both of their health bars while barely living off of 1 HP, and then this happened. Nice. Added to the counter. Also, is it just me, or did Batman not even get hit here? What are these hitboxes? Okay, second attempt. This time around, the Titan actually started the fight by charging at me like normal, which made getting some early damage a lot easier than the last attempt. Heck, right after I finished beating him down the first time, the same guy decided to charge at me again immediately. Not sure why, considering their AI isn't supposed to behave like this anymore, but hey, makes things a lot less of an issue for me, that's for sure. Now, after I'd already made it through one of their health bars entirely, this pretty much just enabled me to ride on one Titan while beating up the other, and once once the Titan threw me off, the second guy was already down on one knee and ready for me to ride him instead. So yeah, it was kind of just a back and forth of me using the Titan's modded damage increase to damage themselves instead of me, while I was in no danger of getting hit at all the way until one of the Titans was defeated. Now here's where the problem started to arise for me though. You see, for the life of me, I could not get the second Titan to charge. I waited for so long, but nothing happened. He would just walk over to me instead and start swinging. This meant that the good old punch, evade strategy was my only option. At least until my evade completely bugged out, causing me to take a heaping amount of damage. Yeah, at this point I was just ready to restart because I thought he was bugged, but nope, he eventually did charge after like 5 minutes, and after a couple more punches, explosive gel, and a few more punches, the final Titan was defeated and the boss fight was over. That was definitely the most challenging fight that the Botanical Gardens has to offer, at least for now. That means we can breeze through talking to Ivy about how the key to a Titan cure lied within Croc's lair, finish a couple more combat fights, and get through one more stealth encounter where all I had to do was silent take down one thug, sonic battering another, and the 3 remaining thugs were at the mercy of my multi-battering. Once we hear Ivy get injected with a dose of Titan on our way out the door, we've officially gotten through the Botanical Gardens. At least until we come back here later. Our next objective is to go to the Arkham Mansion where we can talk with Aaron Cash about how to get into Croc's lair. To get there though, we have to go through Ivy's new Titan Spores, which I was quick to learn that these guys do so much damage now, and they also attack a lot faster than normal. Like, there's usually a small delay between when they spawn and when they attack Batman, so you have time to destroy them with your batarangs, but it seemed like the spores were just firing off at me instantly as soon as they spawned half the time, making avoiding taking damage virtually impossible. Not only that, but I'm not sure if they have some sort of anti-healing factor now due to the mod, because all I know is that I made it to the Arkham Mansion, went through the whole obstacle course, talked to Cash about the entrance to Croc's lair, and was already halfway to intensive treatment. Meanwhile, my health bar was still in the red. You know what that means? I had to start this big combat encounter as a one-tap, so one mistake and I was done for. I survived for a good while, but after I pre-fired a counter expecting this guy to attack me and he just didn't for some reason, I was stuck in an animation and got insta-killed by the stun baton. So after adding yet another death to the death counter, I restarted the fight from scratch with a brand new health bar and was successful this time around. However, I just want you to take a look at how fast this guy punched me because of the difficulty mod speeding up his attack animations. How am I supposed to react to that exactly? Anyways, after a quick duel with a sniper who somehow saw me but couldn't kill me after shooting me twice, because like I said, the snipers are the only enemy type who didn't receive a massive damage buff from the mod for whatever reason, we can finally head inside intensive treatment to get to the sewers. Right upon entering the building again, we're faced with, yep, another stealth encounter, but this time around, I can't use the gargoyles because they're wired to blow. So what did I do? Well, it was pretty straightforward. I simply just targeted enemies that were all alone using silent takedowns or the battering ground takedown combo. The strategy doesn't work in every Predator section, but in a room of this size with so many floor levels, yeah, it's not hard to just wait for a thug to separate themselves from the rest and then pick them off safely. So after clearing the room, going through a 4th wall break, and finishing this sequence as Joker, which clearly has some text change now because of the mod, we finally arrived at the 3rd and final Scarecrow boss fight. Remember how in the previous 2 boss fights, I was always talking about how Scarecrow's faster movement leads to so many close calls? Well, that's amplified to 11 for this final fight, where it felt like no matter what I did, I was always touching the edge of Scarecrow's vision beam, just barely avoiding death at all times. I swear, Scarecrow is timed so perfectly with how long it takes Batman to get into another safe spot that his vision is literally just a frame or two behind from actually causing a game over screen even when you do it flawlessly. With that said though, due to Scarecrow's speed increase and the pressure I felt by always touching the outer edge of his vision, I played a lot more carefully, making sure I had Scarecrow's timing down before making a move, which led to me getting through the section unscathed. You know what that means though? Time for phase 2. Now the first part of stage 2 is just a bunch of skeletons who you might think are a cakewalk, but these guys do even more damage than basic thugs for some reason, which doesn't make sense considering they're supposed to be nothing more than basic thugs outside of the Fear Toxin Nightmare. But hey, they also go down in 1 punch unlike the normal basic thugs who take like 6 punches, so who am I to complain? Now after getting through the skeletons, a Titan emerges out of the ground, and remember how Titans are far less likely to start their charge move now because of the mod? Well, because this arena arena is so freaking small, it was like impossible for me to create enough space for the Titan to charge. He would just keep walking up to me for close range attacks. I eventually did force him into a corner though, quickly made my way to the opposite corner, and that was finally enough to get him to do his charge move and finish him off. Now for the third and final phase that combines both the Titan and a bunch of skeletons, I cleared out the basic skeletons fairly quickly, leaving just the Titan. And what do you know, he wouldn't charge again. I literally ran around for over 2 minutes just trying to force him into the corner and then running to the opposite corner to create enough distance, but this dude was not having it this time, I swear. It took a while, but he finally charged, meaning we can escape the Scarecrow nightmare, chase after him down through the sewers, and once we finally catch up to Crane, Croc emerges out of the water, drags Scarecrow back in with him, leading us perfectly into the Killer Croc boss fight. Now, as far as I'm aware, the Killer Croc boss fight is the only one that didn't receive any sort of changes because of the mod, not even a damage increase because he just instantly kills you anyways. Maybe he was a little more aggressive than usual. It felt like Croc was popping out of the water a lot more frequently and was destroying the platforms more often as well, but outside of that, the boss fight was extremely straightforward. Just wait for him to pop out, throw a batarang, and keep collecting the antidote as you move along. So after defeating Croc with little to no issues, we head back to the Batcave to create an antidote for Titan, get attacked by Poison Ivy's plants, grab the Ultra Bat Claw, and then go the long way to finally get back to the sewers where we can stop the pumps from releasing Joker's Titan supply into Gotham River. I decided to go after the east pump first, you know, the one where the Predator section is. Well, I'm not sure what I was doing, but I just completely zoned out and ran into a bunch of armed thugs. I somehow managed to punch my way out, grapple up, and survive though, but it doesn't really matter because like I said, the enemy AI is much smarter now to the point where they basically have hacks, and this dude just randomly decided to snipe me off the gargoyle even though I hadn't even been spotted, killing me. Add it to the counter. The next time around, I simply put the Ultra Bat Claw to use and it did all the work for me. This gadget is literally so broken, I swear. So after clearing out the room and disabling the east pump, we can head over to the west pumps. These two are fairly easy, it's just a combat encounter with mostly basic thugs, so after many punches, I eventually cleared the room, disabled the pumps, and then headed back into this area for the final boss fight of the sewers. Now look, this is yet another room with the modified Titan AI, tons of regular enemies, and a very small area to work with, so I'm not gonna lie, I died a lot here. It's one thing when I can just focus on getting a Titan to charge and don't have anything else to worry about, but when I constantly have to work around him to take the rest of the guys out first before turning my attention onto him, the Titan can just keep getting right up close to me, hit me while I'm in a special combo attack, and an evade, and pretty much anything else, and 1 or 2 of these hits is enough to completely finish me off. Not to mention the bugs where sometimes the flip over dodges don't work on the Titan, meaning I'm completely exposed, and the many grouped up enemies that have extremely fast attack speeds are also trying to kill me. So after 4 rounds of eating extremely high damaged punches and dealing with constant asylum jank while trying to get as far away as possible so the Titan would finally just charge at me, I had enough on my 5th attempt and rather opted to simply chip away at his health bar instead through punches. Of course, getting the Titan to charge is still by far the most optimal way to deal damage to him though, so after clearing the 2nd round of thugs, I found that the only way I could get him to use his long range charge move while we were both inside of this very tiny area was to hide inside of this little extended part of the room where the Titan originally entered, and that apparently created enough space between the two of us to finally get him to charge. Of course, when he does charge at me, being in this extremely narrow little area is extremely risky, so after clearing the 3rd round of enemies that came into the room for the Titan's final phase, I opted to have him be the one stuck inside of the narrow little room while I had the rest of the area to evade out of the way. Once the Titan charged, all he had left was a smidge of health that I easily took out using chip damage, and the fight was officially over. So after 4 deaths, I eventually cleared the room on my 5th try. Anyways, with the pumps deactivated and the sewer section of the game done, we can finally make our way back above ground and head over to the Botanical Gardens again to defeat Titan Poison Ivy. The problem is that we still have to get through some snipers and all the mutated plants first, and I just so happened to get spotted by the snipers once again. I actually thought I was going to die to the snipers this time around after having my health bar shot down to a 1-tap, but with nowhere else to go, I literally just spammed dodge roll. I can't believe it, but it actually worked. Panic rolling usually has the opposite effect in most games, but I was eventually able to lure one of the snipers into a safe spot, take him out, line launch over to the other tower, and take the other sniper out, all while I was a 1-tap and actively being shot at by the way, and I had officially survived the scare. Now as for the mutated plants, like I said, the spores seem to come at you a lot faster than normal, leaving next to no time to react. I got hit a few times while I was making my way through the Botanical Gardens, and you know what that means? I was low on health just in time to enter to the Poison Ivy boss fight. Now, as far as I'm aware, the difficulty mod doesn't make any drastic changes to Ivy's boss fight overall, but it does add some massive damage increases to her, which is especially bad because remember, I'm essentially playing with half health at all times this late into the story. So the first stage of the boss battle is fairly straightforward. Run away from the vines when Ivy's controlling them, and when she starts shooting spores, dodge and throw batarangs. I say straightforward, but due to my lower health heading into the fight and the massive damage increase that Ivy does now, I did end up dying to these spores on my first attempt. However, this did sort of help refresh me on the timing of these spores, so the next round I easily made it past phase 1 with a full health bar ready for phase 2. Now phase 2 is where things get a lot more complicated because while trying to fight Poison Ivy, you have to deal with her mind-controlled guards attacking you at the same time. My plan was to try and take out all the guards first just so I could focus on Ivy, kinda like I've been doing with all the other boss fights as well, but I accidentally attacked too far into the vines, got grabbed, took some massive damage, and then got punched right after mid-evade, rendering me with basically 1 HP. It's okay though, because usually when you unlock a new upgrade, your health is restored even if you're in the middle of a fight, right? Yeah, the problem with this is I forgot it needed to specifically be a health upgrade to use this exploit, the very thing I obviously can't unlock in this run, meaning I died again. So after another restart, this time around I purposely went as far away as I possibly could get from these absolutely deadly vines while simultaneously punching all the guards and mixing in batarangs to whittle down Poison Ivy's health, and once all the guards were defeated, she eventually entered the next part of this phase. From here, all it took was a couple of well-timed dodge rolls with some batarangs to get to the next wave of guards, and they don't really matter though, because I had already dealt so much damage to Ivy that all it took was just a bit more chip damage before she officially went down for good. Overall, not as difficult as I was hoping for, considering that this is supposed to be one of the final boss fights of the game, and it didn't really feel all that different from the base game. I mean, I did die twice, so I don't know if I can be talking, but still, it felt like the other boss fights throughout the game have been much harder than this one. So with Poison Ivy defeated, we can make our way over to Joker's party to confront him one final time, and after getting blown up and then listening to Joker's whole monologue, he unleashes 2 more Titan enemies onto us to defeat. Oh boy, another Titan fight. This one's sure to be just as hard as the rest, if not even harder. Well, no, actually, this was probably the easiest one yet. Since we're in a large open room, I had 0 issues with getting the Titans to charge at me despite the mod making it harder for them to do that, and once they charged, it eventually led to me just being able to climb on their back, deal massive damage to the opposing Titan to the point where he was now down, then climb on the other Titan's back to do the same thing, rinse and repeat. Obviously, not saying it was easy, especially at this stage of the game. I even almost screwed up at the end when I was trying to finish off all the Titans, but we got through it nevertheless. You know what that means. Joker shoots himself with Titan, brings us up to the roof, and it's time for the final boss fight of the game. Now, as opposed to his regular boss fight, this difficulty mod actually turns Titan Joker into an absolute tank who is completely immune to any and all of your attacks. Nah, I'm just kidding, this was just a glitch. What the mod actually does to the boss fight is make Titan Joker a lot more aggressive. When you're playing normally, all you have to do is simply run around in circles, and Joker's usually pretty easy to avoid, right? Well, here he's much harder to dodge, and he seems to always manage to get in range to deal damage, especially considering his ridiculous hitboxes where he doesn't even have to make contact with you to actually hit you. I mean, just look at this, it's absolutely insane. He literally whipped out the same move on me 4 times in a row, just barely missing every single time. I'm sure you're not surprised at this point, but Titan Joker also happens to deal a ridiculous amount of damage, not just leaving you in the red, but going even further into your health bar to the point where you can be one-tapped by anything. I even ended up dying once to this attack after I'd taken a little damage in the prior wave of combat. That wasn't my only death though, because I actually died to a knife guy as well. This was the first time I'd ever been hit by one of these guys during my entire playthrough, so I didn't actually know how much damage he did until now, but holy, he cut through my full health bar just like that. After 2 deaths though, I had pretty much put everything together and the boss fight became fairly straightforward. I figured out how to avoid Titan Joker when he came down to attack me, despite the added difficulty. You just have to be a little more careful with the timing like it was in the Scarecrow fights, and in combat I was absolutely annihilating thugs by throwing them into the electric walls and blowing up Joker's bombs right next to them. After 3 waves of this, all that's left to do is pull Joker down one final time with the Ultra Backclaw, and with that, we have successfully beaten Batman Arkham Asylum's insane difficulty mod on the hardest mode with 0 health upgrades whatsoever, and it only took a whopping 20 deaths. Overall, it was definitely a ton of fun. If you remember way back to when I tried beating Mr. Freeze without using takedowns, it was a very similar feeling to that, where the increased difficulty forcing me to use different strategies sort of breathed new life into the game and made Arkham Asylum feel like something new after all of these years. Again, I just want to give another huge shout out to GP Unity, the creator of this mod, which I'll have linked in the description if you want to download and play it for yourself. And I just want to say that this will definitely not be the last time we use this mod. I have a lot of challenges and video ideas in mind that involve the Knightfall Overhaul, like possibly an Eye in the Night playthrough where if I die once, I have to restart, which will be very difficult with the damage increase, mind you. I'm currently using it for my Arkham Asylum horror mod video as well, and maybe even more stuff to come, we'll see. Anyways, thank you so much for watching, I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you later.